Alright, so I had to re-record this because VoiceMod had a really silly filter on, and I probably spoke for too long. What has been the most surprising thing you've learned about this month? Well, I think the most surprising thing was probably the ease of texturing through Photoshop. Um, I think that if you have the right texture or wrap for an appropriate model, I think that it can be really surprising and easy how decent something can look for something that's essentially a drag and drop. Uh, so that came out really nice. What else? Here's my shield, like again, something where if you find the right textures for the appropriate model, it can be very quick and easy. So that was surprising. The workflow through Photoshop with that. Another thing that was surprising is how much I do enjoy Substance Painter, which I do things in real life with acrylic and other woodwork and such, and I'm surprised that I can spend so many hours in Substance Painter and not really get bored and enjoy myself. So that's been fun. The most difficult thing, obviously, was probably mastering, well, I wouldn't say mastering, but getting a hang of layers inside of Substance Painter. Um, even doing these swatches, I still feel like I was having trouble, or I would just end up working tired. I'm a big sucker for the emissive layer. Obviously, this is an awful representation because this is a pixelated JPEG. But I had fun in here doing like playing with emissive. This I think I learned a lot about layers doing this one, making this nebula, making things appear, going back and forth to layers. So I spent a decent amount of hours on this. Um, so that's probably been the hardest with this month, and I feel like every month there's a lot of software to learn. Um, so that's always tricky to memorize things and kind of make sure that you're going to hold that with you. Like, I do remember most of what I've gone through with Maya, but there's some things where, yeah, you'd always need a refresher course. I think from this month, I could probably spend more time inside of Photoshop. I'll go back through the LinkedIn and so on because I'm kind of a person of habit. Like, I've used digital nonlinear editors for years, and I feel like I never really always know all the shortcuts or the tools, and once I'm set in my ways, I just want to get something done. So that's been hard to kind of get the hang of that, but I think by this last week and this current project, I think I got the hang of it. What am I most proud of? I think that everything kind of turned out mostly how I wanted. One of the first things I got to really spend time on was this Robot Boy texture, and what this was from was I was kind of inspired by a late 90s PC game, Atomic Bomberman, and this is kind of like Mega Man a little bit too. So one of the first things I thought of before getting started was like, oh, if I can make like a bomb blast in his face and take out his emotional matrix display here, whatever you want to call it. And I was beyond what the assignment called for, but which didn't seem to be a problem that I was getting ahead of myself. But it really, something like this really reflects the power of PBR and the illusion of height and so on. A lot going on here. I thought these cracks worked really well to kind of show a sort of that this obviously melted a bit. And if you've ever broken an LCD screen or old dot matrix, like you know that they artifact like this. So luckily one of these square alphas was able to kind of represent a emoji or simple face being scrambled. And I thought it was just made it an interesting piece of art given the context of holding the daisy with the bumblebee. So this was fun. There's some areas where I can look at and be like, oh, there should be shadow here to show height because obviously a tire tread. So this is one of those strokes that was kind of thrown on, and I didn't really look back. And So there's other tire stuff, but it's more thought out. Um, Oxidizing copper backpack, like that could have been a little less reflective, stuff like that. But I was pretty proud of this one, mostly for week 4, what I'm working on now. Um, but this kind of showed me that, like, hey, you can make something pretty decently looking just by putting in the time, and kind of you're really utilizing your own creative or artistic skills. One of the things I did run into, like, this was before we covered opacity, so the wings are kind of like not great. But I did manually paint in some veins or striations, what have you. I had trouble creating the fur on the bee, so there's just kind of like hash marks to create the illusion of some hair. And I just had to kind of hurry up and submit it because I was taking too much time on it. Um, I would say at certain levels, like that's going to come down to probably the sculpt. I could be wrong, but I feel like you're limited in what your height can show. Like you can probably only get up to maybe an eighth of an inch of illusion on a 2D map, if you will. So that was the only thing, but I think this obviously looks awesome, especially the scratches in the anodized surface. Another unique thing, so that's one thing, was this kind of look of like melted paint of some sort, like there's a heat blast at his feet. There's other things, I wish I could turn this, but there's a couple like lower levels, like these kind of pocks and dimples. Like there's one behind him, a couple scrapes. So I tried to utilize a lot of different, um, scars and that kind of tell a story of where he's been. So that one I was pretty proud of. The one probably, what was it? Um, or what are you most proud of her? So yeah, I think me building on it and making something that's presentable to like maybe professional felt really good, because my whole thing is I like to present anything I'm working on, even if it's for class stuff and it's like I'm learning, is I like to share on social media because I share all my other projects. So being in school is a part of that journey, and I try to work to make something that I feel comfortable presenting. On the flip side of that, the successor project was I had it was really hot out Memorial Day week, and I didn't get to this until Sunday. And it was an interesting experiment because originally I started painting this almost like Iron Man, where it had this great like deep red anodized surface. Then I was going to do gold, and I was kind of um, that's kind of cliche and obvious to make something popular and do this. It reminded me of in 7th grade we had to make, I think it was like, they're paper mache, not plaster, but like paper mache masks. Um, so it's like almost like plastering where, you have to lay down, put straws in your nose, etc. And my teacher, she was like, no movie characters, and this was around the time that Phantom Menace was coming out. I'm not a prequel person, but I still went to see it, and I made my mask into Darth Maul anyway. So that always kind of haunts me when I'm working on certain things, like no movie references. So what I did was, I needed something quick, and I said, okay, red. Let's do them red because I did blue. So we'll go in the opposite direction a little bit. And I got the idea to just take a reference and just make him like that. And I thought of like a 70s Ferrari because I was like, oh, I see red and chrome, which I wish I could do a 3D if I had the painter file up. This one was tricky because when I submitted, I forgot to do the toggle the glare on. So the emissive had the color, like there's bright white, but I didn't use a two-tone material or paint in other material. So once I got that set up and kind of resent how it would work, that was more what I was going for. But anyway, I took a 70s Ferrari, 1972, 246 Dino GT or something, and I wanted to take the elements from the car and just represent it on the robot. So obviously the 4 tires, you have 4 rubber surfaces to represent that. The gray here represents like the brushed aluminum wheels. decent amount of chrome accents. I loved making these like latches chrome. They kind of reminded me of old ice chests or coolers. The antenna you can't really see here, but they're done in kind of a nice like leathery dashboard. And then this was going to be wood like the steering wheel, but it was kind of like a tan leather, and then that's chrome there. So overall, it was a nice exercise in just taking a fast reference and having to rush something. Like it still took hours and hours to do. The Bumblebee, the only improvement is doing the opacity channel. It looks much better. I took less time with a fur, but I did. I saw a bumblebee in person and got nearby because I was referencing images, but I was like, oh yeah, they really have yellow fur over the whole top of their head. So there's some difference with this one and the last one. So this one is like, it still looks good, but I was bummed out. I couldn't have like a couple more days on it. The most proud, probably the recent project. I should show my reference. So when we got that Alien bust, there are certain Alien movies that I'm into, but I am not a big sci-fi person. I used to watch Next Generation, but I'm not a big, spaceship and alien guy. I'm more of a monster person. And when I saw that model, though, which is a really great model to work with, I thought of Ray Harryhausen's Medusa in Clash of the Titans, and I realized, if you look here, she's got kind of carnivorous teeth going, like very vampiric, which I know the model has a couple of fangs and flatter. Like, it looks like, so this is a reproduction one, obviously, that you could buy, and it's like a vinyl figure, so it's obviously not 100% accurate, but it's still a pretty true depiction. Because what Harryhausen referenced with this, and there's something funny about this, I'll say in a second, is he was referencing a live-action movie. I think it's called The Gorgon, and I forget the actress's name. But that is the reason for the ridiculous makeup. You have this bright blue like pastel kind of eyeliner or eyeshadow rather, and like just awful lipstick. And I love that somehow he incorporated that, and it's just terrifying. Like the scene from Clash of the Titans haunted me as a little kid. So when I discovered these movies as a young adult and started buying the DVDs, like oh man, I still love this. And I did put like an image of Ray just kind of as a joke. I had to like watch over what I'm doing. I didn't really utilize the Nosferatu, but I threw that up. This one was more of an underlit thing. Like I'll probably reference this in Maya because I want to light her how she is in the movie. So how that came out, we'll go through some screen grabs of the render. So my whole thing was like, how can I make this Medusa-like or be as close to the stop-motion model as possible? And obviously this is textured in the reptile setting, but it's obviously has many things done to it. I don't know why there's like a dead pixel looking thing there. That's weird. Maybe it wasn't fully rendered. A lot of cool things going on here with height, especially if you're using a reptile skin. It was really cool to kind of knock that layer down and make a very believable height. So I'm very satisfied with that. The scales, the pebbly skin, the way that everything works on it. So I think I did pretty decently being true to this one. But here's the thing, is this is like the original model, but if you look at when they restored it, it's almost like they painted a lot of that over, which I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if it's one of those things where you question, should this just be preserved? So I don't know if Harryhausen intended this to be dirt or if that's like general wear, like her things had fallen off of her. Because obviously like things like, if you you can't hold on to latex. Like maybe you can preserve it, but usually any movie used props that are like foam latex or even like the kind of Chuck E. Cheese animatronics, like those just completely break down. And I've had latex appliances in real life do that to me. So I don't know if the screen used Medusa looked more like this. Obviously there's still some shading under her breast and like sternum and stuff, but So anyway, the point being is to look at this in bright or garish light is the color is kind of ridiculous, right? But my intention was I had to be true to that, and then if I take this in Maya and make like do some fluid emitters, doing flames, maybe a little animation, and try to get the actual look of the film. So that was the whole thing with that. Um, like I said, huge Harryhausen fan, so it was an absolute pleasure to get this like to kind of work for me. But I did get it to the point where I'd be sitting here and kind of looking at it, and I'm like, yeah, that's definitely kind of spooky. Um, and of course, I have this great environment because in the movie, Perseus, pulls her head out of the bag, and the Kraken's coming out of the water, so it was kind of cool. There was an environment for that. Um, the only other thing, like, I had to kind of, like I said, you can only go so far with PBR before I think the model would just have to have a different sculpt. But the whole thing here was her tail, obviously, which is like she's a snake, so she's like a centaur as a snake, as a gorgon. And so all I could really do is kind of shadow in some lines and create that illusion a little bit. So it works. It's not perfect. Let's see. Let's just open the paint view because then I can give a 3D view of this. But yeah, it still works. I could probably go in and perfect some things on here, but I had to get to the point of submitting. What else? So in the film, there's a scene where Calibos stabs the bag with the head on it, and her blood in the film is almost like, it's so ridiculously red. It is opaque, but it is almost like glowing. It's so red that, and then it falls to the ground. It forms like a couple of scorpions. So I thought it would be really cool to play with the emissive channel and make some blood that kind of glows. Like obviously this one's, I probably used a brighter shade, but I wanted to mix it up. This one came out really nice. Just this, there's like a real 3D effect here going on, a little drip. So I could still work on creating the illusion of height, but everything that's true in real painting or arts and crafts comes through Substance Painter, and if anything, your imagination can go farther because you can undo things. Because on canvas, you can only push so much paint and have so many layers. But the thing is it's almost like, I had a keyboard when I was a kid, and it taught you chords, so you had one key chords, and that's kind of how I learned to play the piano. So if you look at a lot of these normal channels, height, you'll see how they attain that, like how the tone changes. And like there's spots where I'll manually add more shadow to create height, but like right here, for example, so that's a smaller reptile skull, but you shrink it down, it looks like some sort of boil, and then you put a little shadow on it, it heightens it, and it becomes rounded. So there's a lot of attention to detail with that. I try to do it a little more here. I could probably work on that more, but and that, imagine being like pus and dirt, and it's just real nasty. I tried to experiment with making her tongue emissive, like there's blood in there or something, but instead there's just kind of some green goo that's like almost too reflective, but I love it. And then instead of like a parenthesis, this is almost more of a scar that has kind of a 3D, obviously a couple punctures. That could be cleaned up a little bit, but overall, like, yeah, this actually kind of ended up spooking me once I was really looking at it. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the feeling that I kind of got from these models. Obviously, I can't make it snarl, but she's with a little bit of coloring, like, I feel like it got pretty close. And so yeah, I'm definitely proud of this, and like I said, I share everything. It's not just about submitting for the sake of class. It's about making stuff that I'm like eager or proud to show on social media, even if it's like I'm getting better. So very pleased with this. I look forward to, working in more Substance Painter. So as far as my goals, that's kind of, right now and I probably won't switch my concentration, but I'm character and environment design. So I feel like, spending a lot of time in Substance Painter outside of when I start sculpting more. Like I've been wanting to practice even just with Blender and stuff, but I really haven't been. So that's why I've been taking so much time on this, because I feel like this is almost equally as important as your sculpting skills. So you can't really get far without a texture, and that's why. Like this right here too. Before I did this, it looked okay, but once you add that amount, like, you know, scars and damage and pox, like it's just kind of a blast. That's one thing I didn't say though, is I feel like with damage, sometimes it's kind of a cop-out because you can hide a lot versus trying to make something pristine like that. And this could have had way more attention to detail. This turn signal representation, it doesn't actually look like that. It's more opaque, or it has opacity layer over it. So I don't know why it looks like that in this render, but yeah, as far as goals, like hopefully everything builds up. Hopefully I remember everything and it becomes second nature. I did a much better job with my layers, you know, starting with Bree's lesson on translucency and scattering. The only thing I would say that gets confusing is, like you can see my scattering has proper values, but obviously once you're layering up, you're going to change the translucency. So this is like, this should be a little brighter. Like the nose tip still is, so I love how this negative space looks with the blood. I don't know why, that's really creepy, but yeah, I'm definitely proud of this one. Like I said, I work as if I'm doing a job, or if I'm creating art I want to exhibit. Even though like I said, I would spend more time on this. I wish there was more I could do for the horns, but they still work as their own thing, even if they're not perfectly able to represent what's going on here. And I'd really like to order one of these. A 30 centimeter tall vinyl polyresin figure. So yeah, that's I had a lot of fun. I mean, I still have the software, so I'm still going to be playing in this in the coming weeks, even going back to Maya lighting and stuff. But like I said, in character design, I feel like it's important for me to be proficient and really kind of know the technicals, but kind of let the imagination fly and play around, so that in the future my workflow is faster. So yeah, so that's Alien turned Medusa, and hopefully that's acceptable. But that's my interpretation. Maybe it's a Gorgon from another planet, or maybe that's the origin of a Gorgon. But yeah, so having said that, I will give one last look here. We'll put her out to sea. Get ready to kill the Kraken. So, but yeah, that's my Medusa. And it does, the thing with this is it makes me realize, you know, I'm not a big fan of a lot of the CG. Like, I feel like they haven't really done monsters justice, usually. And it's really cool to see this, and it's kind of surreal to be able to play with powerful software like this, because as far as the reboot of Clash, like, I wasn't at all satisfied with the Medusa, and it makes you wonder if they did go in a direction similar to this. Obviously, there would be more to render and get realistic, but I mean, even this right here looks pretty good to me. I mean, this in a video game would be amazing. I would love to see this. So, alright, that's it for now, and look forward to more classes.